Hey there, this is Natalie, here with some speculation about ReZero Arc 7. When he completed Arc 6 of the web novel by pushing out chapters at incredible speed towards the end of October, Tappei Nagatsuki said that Arc 7 would start being released when work was finished on Volume 25 of the light novel. Now, it wasn't clear from what he said whether that meant when the light novel was released in Japan, or just when his own part in getting it out was done, which could of course have been earlier. So we all kind of took this to mean that chapters could start coming out at any time. But with volume 25 of the ReZero light novel releasing in Japan on Christmas Day, which is just over a week away, at this point we can probably expect to start seeing Arc 7 after Christmas. Speaking of Christmas being only a few days away, I'm still really hoping to reach 2,000 subscribers by Christmas Day. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet and want to really help me out, then please hit the subscribe button. I will be making content about the new web novel content as soon as we start getting it, as well as covering Season 2 Core 2 of ReZero, and continuing to make theory and analysis type videos about the series, as well as about Attack on Titan, which I've also started covering. Plus, there will also be weekly episode reviews of World Trigger and Log Horizon in the new season, so there's lots of stuff to come. And I really hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already, and join me for whatever parts of all of that you're interested in. But with that channel stuff out of the way, let's get on with the point of this video, which is to look at a small detail in Arc 6 that I think could turn out to be very significant. Now, speculation that Arc 7 might be a war arc, or at least feature some kind of potential for war, is nothing new. Ever since we learned to expect that the country of Vollachia would be featuring heavily in Arc 7, the idea that the context for this could be war has been one a lot of people have reached. Vollachia, by the way, is to the south of Lugnica, where all of the story's taken place so far, and it's also where Priscilla comes from. Though it may be hard to see how Tappei is going to transition from the situation he left Subaru, Rem and Lugunica in at the end of Arc 6 to something like a big war type situation involving a country we haven't even seen yet, I do think it's possible we will get some interlude chapters, as we have done with previous arcs, and Subaru's current situation may be handled in those. A lot of stuff can happen in those interludes. Rem was eaten by Leibat and Kaitos in the interlude between Arcs 3 and 4, for instance, so I wouldn't rule out that that will be interlude material and Arc 7 will have a cleaner starting point. But this video isn't to speculate about how we might get to Subaru getting involved in some kind of war-related scenario involving Vollachia and Lugunica. It's just to talk about some evidence that such a war has been brewing in the background. There are bits and pieces in side stories and just all over the place that give hints about the relationship between Vollachia and other countries, and the nature of Vollachia itself, and I will delve into what we know about Vollachia more in videos as we start to get into Arc 7. But one of the biggest clues that the situation between Lugunica and Vollachia could be described as being on the brink of a full-blown conflict is one that you don't have to dive deep into side content to see, because it comes from something Julius says in Arc 6, Chapter 23. This is from the web novel, so may have been changed or omitted in the light novel. The light novels for Arc 6 are only available in Japanese at the moment, so I don't know about minor changes like that. But the fact that Tappei wrote this at all, even if it isn't canon in the light novels, does tell us that this stuff is intended to foreshadow or connect to something he plans to do later in the story. This is the scene where the Taigeta library has just been unlocked, and the characters in Subaru's Arc 6 adventuring party are trying to figure out what the deal is with the books of the dead. Subaru manages to read the book of Typhon, the Witch of Pride, and this is what teaches him what happens when you read the book of somebody you know. But Julius also reads a book of the dead. It is necessary for Julius to have had the experience of reading one of the books for things that come later, but we don't know that much about Julius's life, so Tappei could really have just invented any random dead person that Julius could have known and used them for this, if the point is just for Julius to have read one. But instead, he has Julius read the book of a Vollachian general and reveal that he knows this person to be dead because he killed him himself. It's an easy moment in the story to overlook, since it is low-key and never really mentioned again, and we as readers are of course far more interested in hearing about the books of the dead of people we've seen, like Typhon. But this conversation is pretty interesting. I'm going to read you out a bit of it here to remind you of exactly what was said, and so credit to Witch Cult Translations for the English translation I'm using here. There's a link to this chapter in the description if you want to read or reread the whole thing. Just as a note that in the point in Arc 6 where this happens, Anastasia is possessed by the artificial spirit Echidna, though Julius doesn't know this yet, and Subaru hasn't lost his memories, so he is his normal self in this part. Julius has just apologised for reading a book without letting the others know he was going to do it. Anastasia, who's actually Echidna, and Emilia have forgiven him, and now he's ready to share what he learned by reading the book with everybody else. He says, Balroy Temagriff, a general of the Empire of Vollachia, is a deceased man, and the one who took his life is none other than myself. Anastasia, to have killed another country's general, this is quite a shock to take in. Anastasia-sama is, no, please forget what you just heard. At Julius's frankly described recollections, Anastasia narrowed her eyes. Based on Julius's reaction just now, it seemed that this had been something he'd already shared with Anastasia, before his memory had been taken, and before Echidna had assumed control of her body. Naturally, that Anastasia was the first to know was unsurprising, and instead Subaru and Emilia were quite shocked. Emilia, that's, if what I recall from my studies is correct, I know that the relationship between Lugnica and Vollachia is super poor. But, Subaru, shouldn't killing the Empire's general have started a war or something? At the pair's candid and simple questions, Julius's expression became more assured as he nodded lightly. This was the result of a very delicate situation. Reinhard and Ferris were also dragged into it, and to put it directly, the general had prepared to launch a revolt in the Empire. And I had met him face to face, and stayed in the Empire for a brief period. Subaru, so those two were there too? Isn't Reinhard banned from being exported? Julius, since the foreign emperor wanted to meet him, he was granted permission. Moreover, don't you think the words exporting Reinhard are off? Subaru, just a slip of the tongue. What else should I call it? Smuggling? Something that couldn't be exported. Such phrasing was wrong in usage. In truth, after having felt Reinhard's logic-defying combat ability in Priscilla, it wasn't difficult to imagine that Reinhard would be a nightmare for the forces of other countries to contend with. Not allowed to approach the border was a perfectly understandable stipulation in international treaties. Julius, in short, that general's name was Balroy Temagriff. My apologies. Due to the sensitive nature of the issue, details of the incident cannot be shared. And in addition, the memory is painful to myself as well. Subaru, so it's something that can't be discussed openly, huh? Got it, I'll keep my mouth shut. Now, the stuff here about Reinhard not being able to cross borders has been mentioned before, and so it's interesting to note that Reinhard was brought into some kind of situation in Vollachia, along with Julius and Felix, and that the Wallachian general Balroy Temagriff ended up dead, killed by Julius, in a sensitive situation that's also a painful thing for Julius to remember. Now, we don't know when this event took place. Arc 6 happens immediately after Arc 5, and of course everybody has forgotten Julius since the end of Arc 5 too, so of course he wasn't doing any nightly stuff after that anyway. But between Arc 3, when we last saw Julius, Felix and Reinhard, there has been about a year of time that's passed, during which the Emilia faction was concerned with its own affairs. This incident could either have happened in that year or prior to Arc 3. If it happened in the year between Arc 3 and Arc 5, the most recently it could have been, given the preparation and travel time involved in the trips to Priscilla and then the expedition to the Pleiades Watchtower, is maybe a couple of months prior to this conversation. It seems that Anastasia would have known about it if it weren't for Anastasia not being Anastasia, and the fact that everything Julius told people has now been forgotten by everybody other than Subaru, so her not knowing doesn't rule out that this happened while Julius was serving as her knight. Since setting out for the Pleiades watchtower, all of the people in the Arc 6 party haven't had any updates on what's going on in the rest of the world, so it's quite possible that things have escalated without them knowing about it, and they could end up returning to find a situation that has evolved, and that could have its roots in what happened between Julius and the other knights and this general. Remember also that Julius did not get his name back at the end of Arc 6, and this could be important. It seems that Julius himself actually killed the general, but what version of events do other people who knew about this, Felix and Reinhardt, but also the top brass on both the Vollachian and Lugunican sides, now think happened? It's quite possible that a war could even be declared based on false memories of the event. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments whether you think this stuff about Balroy Temagriff is going to be important or is just some flavour text, and what you think about the various ideas in this video about a possible war in Arc 7. Since this is a web novel video about Arc 6, you don't need to worry about spoiler warnings in the comments for this one, so feel free to have at it with your Arc 7 predictions. That's all for this video, but I hope you found it interesting. Please give it a like if you did, and once again, please subscribe for more ReZero content. Thank you for watching, and until next time, remember to keep the hype going strong for both Arc 7 and ReZero Season 2 Part 2.